the shadow behind the light. The room was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the heavy silence that fills the air when your own thoughts become louder than the world around you. A man stood alone in the middle of the darkness. His face looked exhausted, his hand resting on his head as if trying to untangle thousands of thoughts trapped inside his mind. Above him floated a single glowing light bulb. Its warm golden light was weak, flickering every few seconds, yet it refused to go out. Behind him, an enormous shadow slowly emerged. It had no face, no eyes, no name. It was simply darkness. The kind of darkness every person carries at some point in life. Fear, doubt, failure, loneliness, regret. The shadow whispered softly, "You're not enough." The man didn't answer. The light bulb flickered again. The shadow grew larger. Every mistake the man had ever made became another layer of darkness. Every rejection, every broken promise, every sleepless night, every dream that never came true. The shadow wasn't trying to attack him. It didn't have to. It only needed him to believe its words. Remember when you failed? Remember when they laughed? Remember when you wanted to give up? The man closed his eyes. For a moment, the darkness almost became convincing. Then something strange happened. The light bulb became slightly brighter. Not because the darkness disappeared, but because the man chose to think. He took one slow breath, then another. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he asked, "What can I still control?" The shadow became quiet. It hated that question. Because darkness survives on helplessness, clarity destroys it. The man realized something. The shadow was enormous, but it had no hands. It couldn't push him. It couldn't hold him. It couldn't stop him from walking. Only his fear could do that. The realization made the light shine brighter. He remembered his childhood. There had been moments when everything felt impossible. Learning to walk, learning to speak, learning to fail. Back then he had fallen hundreds of times. Yet he never called himself a failure. He simply called it learning. Somewhere along the journey of adulthood, he had forgotten that lesson. The shadow had reminded him only of failure. His own memories reminded him of resilience. The darkness shifted. Now it whispered with a different voice. "You are too late." The man smiled faintly. Late compared to whom? Everyone follows a different clock. Some people bloom at 20, others at 50. The sun doesn't apologize for rising after the moon. Neither should he. The shadow shrank just a little. The light bulb glowed warmer. Its light spread across the floor. For the first time, the man could see the path beneath his feet. It wasn't long. It wasn't straight. It wasn't easy. But it existed. That was enough. As he took one small step forward, the shadow followed. He stopped. It stopped. He walked. It walked. Then he understood. The shadow had never been chasing him. It had always been attached to him. Just like every painful memory. Just like every scar. You cannot outrun your shadow. But you don't have to. Most people believe courage means having no fear. It doesn't. Courage is walking while fear walks beside you. The man continued forward. The shadow continued behind him. The difference was simple. The shadow was no longer leading. He was. Hours seemed to pass inside that endless darkness. The light bulb flickered less and less. It had become steady, not brighter than the sun, not powerful enough to erase the darkness, only strong enough to reveal the next step. That was all clarity had ever promised. Not certainty, only direction. The shadow tried once more. What if tomorrow is worse? The man answered quietly. Then tomorrow's version of me will face it. The darkness had no reply. Because anxiety lives inside imagined futures. Peace lives inside the present moment. The man kept walking. Along the way, he discovered countless doors. Each one represented a choice. One door was called anger. Another was called escape. Another was called blame. The shadow encouraged him to open them. They looked easy, comfortable, familiar. Instead, he chose a smaller door. It carried only one word: responsibility. It was the hardest door to open. Yet behind it, the room became brighter. Inside that room stood a mirror. The man looked at himself. He expected to see someone broken. Instead, he saw someone tired. There was a difference. Broken things cannot continue. Tired people only need rest. He smiled. Perhaps he had mistaken exhaustion for defeat all this time. The shadow appeared in the mirror too. Still large, still dark, still present. But something had changed. The shadow looked transparent. The clearer his thinking became, the less solid the darkness appeared. The man finally understood the greatest lie fear had ever told him. Fear had always promised certainty. If you never try, you'll never fail. If you never trust, you'll never be hurt. If you never dream, you'll never be disappointed. But certainty came with another price. A life never truly lived. The light bulb shined brighter than ever before. Not because it had grown stronger, because the man had stopped covering it with doubt. The light had always been there. His thinking had simply become clouded. The darkness remained. It always would. No human life is free from uncertainty. No mind is permanently free from fear. No heart escapes pain forever. The goal was never to destroy the darkness. The goal was to keep thinking clearly while standing inside it. The man reached the end of the path. Ahead of him stood a doorway filled with warm light. He turned around one last time. The giant shadow still stood behind him, silent, waiting. It would probably return tomorrow, perhaps next week, perhaps years later. But now he knew its secret. The shadow could only become larger than his future if it became larger than his mind. He would never allow that again. He stepped through the doorway. The light bulb above his head disappeared. He no longer needed it floating above him. Its light had moved somewhere deeper, into his thoughts, into his choices, into the quiet strength that no darkness could steal. Because even when fear surrounds you, even when uncertainty follows every step, even when life feels heavier than yesterday, a calm mind remains the brightest light you can ever carry. And sometimes, one clear thought is enough to survive the darkest night.